Hello, good morning, good evening, wherever you're going to be watching this. My name is Piotr Szlachtowicz and this is PSTV. And today we're going to have, again, this chance to talk to our former US diplomat and the person who knows what he's talking about in terms of American policy and American politics. Jim Jatras is my guest today. Hello, sir. Hello, welcome again in our show.
Hello, Piotr. Again, it's a privilege and a pleasure to be with you.
It's always a privilege for us. Thank you very much that you accepted and you agree for this interview again. But before we're gonna ask you a first question, I would like to ask for support, and I'd like to say thank you for your support, financial support. So if you'd like to support us, carry on support us. You can see the account number on your screens. You can always buy me a coffee with the Buy Coffee portal. You can do this as well. And like I always say, subscribe to the channel, pass forward, like it, comment on this, what we're just gonna be talking about, because there is a lot to talk about. And this is my first question. Mr. Jim, did you expect a win, the Trump's win, so smoothly? Because there's something going on. I expected, let's put it this way, a big fight, and we have just like normal, like a few decades back. That's it. One person wins and the second agrees, but I don't think it's going to be that smooth. What do you think about that?
Well, as you know from Twitter, I had posted two messages before the election. One is that if Trump was going to win, he would win early. We would not see it drawn out for days or weeks. If that were to happen, I don't think he would have come out on top. Secondly, that like in 2016, my head told me that Trump would lose, but my heart told me Trump would win. So I'm pleased at the outcome. Not probably going to be as happy as with the delivery as I would have liked. But in any case, I'm not all that surprised that he won. And I have to tell you, and look, I know this is going to sound a little conspiracy minded, but I do sort of wonder why the Democratic fraud machine did not go into action like in 2020 or 2022, and why, in a sense, I think Trump was allowed to win, that there were some elements of the permanent government that did not think it was a good idea to steal this election, and that it was better to have a kind of a thermidor in the woke revolution rather than having the totally crazy people in charge.
Yeah, well, that is the question. Last time when I had the chance to spoke to you, we've mentioned this. You've mentioned it that probably there will be some part of deep state which allow him to win, but maybe there was a pressure from the people. There was so many Americans fed up with Democrat situation, with Democrat, every day, what they gonna be, all this immigrant stuff, and could it be that this pressure from the people had an impact on this win?
I think it had an impact on it, but then again, if that were what really made the difference in American elections, Trump would have been reelected in 2020, and Republicans would have had a very good election legislatively in 2022. That didn't happen. So the question is why didn't this dog bark? Why didn't we see a replay of those earlier elections? And I think I think there's more than one answer to that. One is yes, at some point when the people are starting to see through everything and becoming very dissatisfied, maybe it's good politics to take a step back. What did Lenin said? One step forward, two steps back. So I think there's some element of that they were getting out over their skis, as we say, that the woke revolution was becoming too destructive of the American host to keep the regime in power. So I think they made a sensible decision in that respect. But that's why I think, again, it's going to be more like a thermidor or a new economic policy. It's now a counter-revolution.
So, but we have a problem here. I mean, the people and the Trump itself, if he's not going to implement any kind of changes, because there's a huge expectations now. I read every day's, for example, Elon Musk account on Twitter on X, and he demands it. A lot of people who are support Trump demands it rapid changes, demands I would even say a kind of rough fight with the deep state. Do you think it's possible? Is it going to happen?
I don't think so. Already looking at Trump's appointees, the ones we've seen so far are going to be loyal servants of the deep state. I think the real question right now is whether Senator Marco Rubio does end up as Secretary of State. I've not heard any news today that that's either been confirmed or disproved. But if he becomes Secretary of State, I think the writing is on the wall. Then, as far as Musk and who's the other one? That's Vivek Ramaswamy, I guess, is going to be over at this so-called Department of Government something or other. This is the same thing that happened under the Reagan administration during the so-called Grace Commission, waste, fraud, and abuse, and it really couldn't do much to rein in the federal government, except it was kind of cosmetic. This would take major legislative changes that simply will not be enacted even with a Republican Congress. So I think we will see some tightening up. Again, the insanity will be reined in a little bit. We'll see a little more control over the border. We'll see some token deportations, but not mass deportations. Trump will, I think, do the best that he can. People like Musk and Ramaswamy and others will do the best they can. But where's the real power going to be? Not at that little so-called department with Musk and Ramaswamy. It's going to be with Department of Defense, Department of State, CIA, and so forth, and the Treasury Department. And I don't expect that we will have revolutionaries or enemies of the deep state there.
All right. So I heard there is a new chief of CIA. Who is it?
Oh yeah, I heard the name, and frankly, it's somebody I don't know. Some people give him credit for being a little more of a realist than some of the other people. I can't even remember his name. It's not a big name of the sort that you would recognize when he was named there.
But yeah, this thing with Mr. Rubio is quite, I would say, wouldn't say annoying, but it's like it's confirming your words. It's confirming what you just said, that we deal in some cosmetics, but we're not dealing with the real changes. I was watching yesterday a show, Jones' show, and he wasn't that optimistic as well. I mean, he didn't want to show it. He just said we need to look after it. We just need to remind the president that Rubio was a deep state. He's deep state, but he cannot be the Secretary of State, whatever. But I think that Trump should know that. You know what I'm saying? That Trump should know who is going to be on these crucial places before he won the elections.
He does know. I mean, that's the thing. And look, I'm not one of these people to say, "Oh, look, Trump was an agent of the deep state from the very beginning." Maybe he was, but maybe he wasn't. I don't really know. I'm not a mind reader. I don't know where all the skeletons are buried. But it's quite possible too that anybody goes in there and wants to stay in office and wants to stay alive knows that there's certain red lines that he doesn't cross. So he has to put somebody in there that will do maybe some of what he wants done, assuming that's where his heart really is, but knows that he can't really do as much as he would like. So it's incremental change, if that. But I think that the net effect is, as I say, it's not a counter-revolution. It's just a thermidor. We rein in the craziness for a while, but the ship of state will not change fundamentally. And that's obviously going to be true already, in my opinion, in the direction of foreign policy and national security, where you're going to see an attempt for this strategic pivot away from Europe, away from the war in Ukraine, which as everybody knows now is a loser. Try to put that on hold, assuming the Russians are stupid enough to go for a Minsk III agreement, and so they can concentrate on taking down Iran and then get ready for a confrontation with China. That's what it's looking like now.
All right. Yeah, I can tell that was my first question, but you just another question, but you just already said it. But let me ask about the Ukraine. At the moment, President-elect Trump says that we just don't want to do it. We just want to move out. But in our place,
But
we need to be replaced by Poland, France, Great Britain. What do you think about that? But in some ways, when I look on the list who paid for the Trump's campaign, there is still Lockheed Martin over there and the other companies which produce the weapons.
exactly. Look, Trump has been all over the place on Ukraine. He said he will end it in 24 hours. If Zelensky doesn't come to the peace table, I'll cut off all aid to Ukraine. If Putin doesn't come to the peace table, I'll double the aid to Ukraine. Well, which is it? Which is it? You can't do both. I think Mr. Korybko had something interesting to say a few days ago that Trump's style, like he used with Kim Jong-un in North Korea, is to escalate in order to de-escalate, to come in with a bunch of threats. I'm going to put American boots on the ground. I'm going to send them the Poles and the Brits or whatever, so that the Russians will be scared into making a deal where not only do they have to freeze at the line of contact, but they have to break off their ties with the Iranians and the Chinese. I have no idea what they will propose. There was a plan floated by two gentlemen named Fred Pleitz and Keith Kellogg a couple of months ago. It was a totally unrealistic plan if you look at it from the point of view of what the Russians have been saying. But that really comes back to putting the ball back in Moscow's court. Some kind of proposal will be made that will say, okay, fine, you can have half a loaf. You can have the four oblasts. You can have Ukraine. We'll come up with some phony status for them, but we want a demilitarized zone. We'll have a 20-year delay on Ukraine and NATO. Maybe we'll put some token European forces in, blah, blah, blah. And then the question is whether the Russians are dumb enough to accept that when they have the military advantage. And that's what I'm not sure of from the people that I talk to that supposedly know what's going on in Moscow.
Right. Let's focus on inside problems, inside American problems. And the biggest problem is mass migration. The guys which I've mentioned, I heard in Joe Rogan's, Alex Jones, and the others' podcasts and shows, they really demand to sort the things out. But you cannot sort it out. What do you think about that? The problem with, some people say 18 million people, some people say more than 20 million people, is it is impossible to deport him from the country. I don't understand that the Americans are, they are a nation of many possibilities, but the 20 million people, to bring them back to their own countries is almost impossible. Do you think what is going to happen in terms of these deportations? Is it really possible?
Well, there's a gentleman named Homan, I understand, has been appointed as the border czar, whatever that means. So what authority he will have, I don't know. What I've seen of him, he seems to be a pretty smart fellow with his heart in the right place. But what kind of powers he will actually have, given how gummed up everything in America is with regulations and laws and court cases, and anything you try to do, some judge somewhere is going to strike it down and say it's illegal. Look, if you're going to do something about illegal immigration into the United States, as somebody has said, if the tub is overflowing, the first thing you have to do is turn off the tap and stop letting the water go into the tub. Then you can worry about what's splashing all over the floor. So I think there will be some efforts to tighten up the border. But remember, this is the guy who was going to build the wall. He didn't do that. Will he build the wall this time? Probably not. But I think there will be some effort to step up enforcement on the border. The bigger problem, though, is that Trump keeps saying that the problem is not just these all these foreigners coming to the United States, but that it's illegal immigration. He doesn't want illegal immigration, but he wants lots and lots of legal immigration. Well, that's an easy problem to solve. You just wave your magic wand and say, oh, now it's legal. So I think what we're going to see is something like, let's be honest, what St. Ronald Reagan did during the time he was in office, the biggest amnesty in American history. I think he will try to get some kind of deal where they can tighten up on the border, and then under something not called amnesty, they'll find a way to legalize a lot of the people who are already here and have some token number of people, far, far fewer than the real number, that are actually deported. That's what my guess would be.
Yeah, so I'm just listening. Even myself, especially you know much more things than I do about this, and I'm really getting sad because not because of me, but even in Poland, there was such a high hopes about this win, Trump's win. But the more I hear you, the more I listen to you, the more I assure myself there is just a political theater, nothing more.
Well, I hope it's more than just theater. And like I said at the start, I'm happy that Trump won. I think the opposite would be true. I mean, that was the Democrats are an openly anti-American, anti-Christian, anti-humanity party nowadays. There's simply no way that would be better. So I do hope there will be some improvements over Trump. But let's remember, any time we've ever had a Republican president in office in the last, 70 years, 100 years, every time there's a lurch to the left from the Democratic Party, the Republicans don't turn it around; they just stabilize it. They let the hot coffees cool a little bit before we get the next round of Democrat-sponsored revolution, and that's what is likely to happen now. The trouble is I think we're now likely getting to some kind of zero point where the very existence of an American nation, not just the republic, but the American people, the American ethnos, is becoming so corrupted and so endangered in terms of its viability as a society. I don't know how much more of this we can take, especially if, back to the foreign front, that Donald Trump, look, Winston Churchill said, I did not become the king's first minister to preside over the liquidation of the British Empire. I don't think Trump became president to preside over the liquidation of the American empire. In my view, as an American patriot, if we maintain this empire, we cannot do anything to stabilize America domestically. That the invade the world mentality will prevail, and people like that, like Marco Rubio, have that written all over them.
Do you think that J.D. Vance can be someone who's going to replace Trump, who's going to be next president of the United States?
I think there's a very good chance of that. On the surface, what I see of J.D. Vance, I like. I know there's some people who are very suspicious of him because of his relationship with Peter Thiel and Palantir, which is very close to the CIA. There's some people that even suspect him of it being some kind of a Manchurian candidate that's placed there by the deep state, and indeed is there to be his successor and be their man to control the so-called America First populism. I don't know if that's true or not. That maybe, again, sounds like way out there in some people's minds. So I certainly can't confirm it, but I'm not in a position to say it's not true.
What about Trump and Middle East, especially genocide in Palestine? What do you think about that, and what is going to be Trump's policy about what state of Israel is doing over there?
Well, never forget the element of Trump's narcissism and putting his own personality first. And apparently, his call when Bibi called him to congratulate him was rather contentious. He was very upset during the time when the 2020 election was still being contested. Bibi was one of the first in line to congratulate Joe Biden. Apparently, that did not sit well with Trump. At the same time, Trump has let Bibi finish the job. We should be giving them even more support. And he's put very strong Israel firsters into his administration so far. Now, you recall that during the first Trump administration, I think it might have been in 2020, when the Iranians shot down that American drone, the reports were that we were 10 minutes away from launching strikes against Iran. And it was only a phone call from Tucker Carlson to Trump that called it off. I don't know. Again, that's what's been reported. I think it's probably true. This time around, I'm not sure Trump can say no. I think there have been enough big donors going into his campaign, and his rhetoric is such that what Bibi wants, Bibi gets. And this time around, I think he very well could get his war with Iran, even though people who have a real strong military background tell me that will be a real problem for the United States, that we can do a lot of damage to the Iranians, but they can do a lot of damage to us. It's not going to be pretty. But this time around, I think they're likely to get the war they want.
Yeah, but in the same time, we have a Russia which supports or stands behind Iran, and then we could start, or probably for 99%, a third world war.
And that's what could happen. Now, look, will the Russians and behind them the Chinese get directly involved if there is a war between Iran and the United States? I don't think they would enter the war as a combatant. I hate to use this example, but maybe some people in Moscow are looking at Iran the same way as NATO was looking at Ukraine. It can be a weapon to use against Iran can be a weapon to be used against the United States and take us down a few pegs in the same way that we hoped Ukraine would damage Russia considerably. Of course, that didn't really happen in the Ukraine war, and I don't think that either the Russians or the Chinese want to see Iran destroyed the same way that Ukraine has been destroyed. But if that war is forced on Iran, I think the Russians and the Chinese will back them up as strongly as they can without getting directly involved in the war.
Let's back to beginning of a conversation, in beginning of our interview, because I was surprised about how smooth went with the Trump's win. But what was the bigger point here? Kamala Harris kind of really poor candidate, or that the society was really fed up with all these leftist ideas, all the woke ideology, which is still implementing in American life, everyday life, and really hurts normal American person. What was the more crucial point in this matter, in your opinion?
Well, I think probably the second, but the two are closely linked. I mean, after this palace coup that removed a sitting president, for goodness sake, Joe Biden, and then not having any kind of democratic, isn't that the name of the party actually? Democratic, not having a democratic process to choose who his successor would be, which apparently Barack Obama preferred to do. But again, I'm just going by what the reports are that I've heard, is that they ended up with a candidate some people think maybe was chosen to lose, or maybe other people thought, since a lot of these people, they're ideologues, they live in an echo chamber, they only talk to people like themselves. So maybe she thought if she could just call Trump a fascist and talk about abortion and we have to save our democracy, that somehow that would work, even though a lot of people are hurting economically. Back to Bill Clinton, it's the economy's stupid. So I don't know. Yeah, I think you're right. A lot of people were fed up, and I think that the Democrat leadership really couldn't see that because they don't live in the real world. They live in a world that's with the people of a certain income in the various suburbs of New York and Washington D.C. that just don't have the same mentality or even understand the majority of this people in this country.
Okay, Jim, you know what? But I think there is one huge win in this situation. What I mean by that the American people are really, a lot of them, realized finally that the media, the mainstream media, are completely liars. They are lying all the time. They are absolutely manipulating. And this time, I'm talking about millions of Americans, finally realized that. And that was a perfect example on, for example, how they've been reporting Trump's campaign. Do you agree with me that American public realized finally, not all the American public, but most of them, especially those who are using the internet, that mainstream media is working for one purpose only, to deceive people?
I agree with that. I don't think that's something that happened just now. In fact, I think that's something that Trump began to uh, that Trump started in the minds of people going at least back to 2016. That there's always been some level of skepticism among some sectors of the public, but he's the one who really got what we might call normie Americans, normies, to understand that yeah, they're a regime media. They lie. They are agents of the deep state. They're as much journalists as Soviet journalists were in communist times. And that has been growing, 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 especially after what happened in 2020 and 2022, even more so now. I think the difference is that having now been allowed to win or having won this election, I think many Americans who were increasingly skeptical will start buying back into the system psychologically that, you know what, after all, our democracy is sound, our republic is sound. And when we go to war against the Iranians or whoever, that's making America great again. And I think a lot of people have been becoming more and more skeptical of the fake democratic small d regime and its lapdog media will start to believe again now that the orange messiah is back in office.
You know, tell me what it's going to be like now, because when I hear a lot of Americans, they're expecting some kind of back to isolation policy of United States. So it means we're not going to be involved in any kind of war outside. But you telling me, for example, that Trump is going to swap from Ukraine to Iran, or maybe to China. How the Americans going to respond for that? You know, because that's kind of interesting.
Well, that's an interesting question. Look, let me give Trump the benefit of the doubt here. Maybe he doesn't want to do that, and maybe he will put the brakes on it at the crucial moment, like he did during his first administration. Maybe he realizes that he couldn't put somebody in office who I don't like the word isolationism. That's like just a name to call people, like calling them a fascist or a racist or something. But at anybody who's a realist and understands that our interests are much more limited than our global power projection, could not get confirmed by the Senate, and that he has to work through the system and put people in who are imperialists, who want to go to war with all these people, but somehow he will hold them back and make sure that doesn't happen, especially since I'm sure there'll be people from the Pentagon telling him, Mr. President, we can't do that. That would be a disaster. We just don't have the resources for that. Our aircraft carriers are vulnerable to hypersonic missiles. Some people will be telling him why you can't do certain things. The trouble is when you look at people like, Rubio, and I hope he does not get that job, reality doesn't matter to people like this because they're on an ideological crusade. They want to do the right thing. That means take care of Iran, take care of China, and we'll put Russia on the back seat for later. I hope I hope Trump is thinking that and that he wants to rein these people in the best he can. But I think we'll know soon enough.
Yeah. By the way, the new CIA director, his name is John Radcliffe. That's what I just found.
Oh yes, yes, right, yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah.
So,
I don't I don't know him real well. What I've heard about him indicates that he's not ideologically different from the others, but he's more rational than the others, which I guess is a plus. The other thing we have to keep in mind is that having Trump in office, if we do get into a war, a lot more regular Americans, and I'm thinking more of young white males in the South or in the Midwest, are more likely to sign up for some America First crusade against whoever the enemy of the week is, rather than they would under what's her name, Kamala Harris. Who's going to sign up with her? A bunch of you know gender fluid trans people. I have no idea.
okay, in the end, I would like to ask you about Poland and Donald Trump. Of course, on every single occasion, Mr. Trump says quite very nice words about Poland. But, for example, we had this, Act 447, which is about Jewish properties. We had Ambassador Mosbacher, which was lecturing us how we're supposed to behave in our own country, and she was trying to implement LGBTQ or whatever. What is going to be policy of Trump's 4 years in terms of this part of Europe, and particularly what is going to be policy towards Poland, in your opinion?
Well, as far as all the rainbow stuff, I don't think they will. They will reverse it, but they won't push it as strongly. It'll be less of a priority for them on all the things about Jewish property and anything that is in that direction. I'm sure that will be even stronger than it was before. Again, that those are voices that speak very loudly in Washington. I think remember Camp Trump? I think we'll probably see a comeback of that. I've heard talk about if we're shifting our focus to the Middle East, that somehow we want to be based less in Germany. Let's move our position more forward into Poland and maybe make Poland our frontline state in the East rather than Germany. I don't know if that's true or not, especially since Germany is a lemon that's been squeezed out. I think we'll probably see the return of the so-called Three Seas initiative. The Intermarium, the Pilsudski was Promethean project that is again trying to set up this cordon sanitaire in the east. Back to what I was saying about Ukraine and Russia, they will try to put that on hold and try to find some way to have a new Cold War with the Russians in the east when the hot war in Ukraine winds down. But again, I think the focus will be more toward the Middle East.
Okay, so the really last final question, Jim. Is this does it mean that there's the end of Zelensky? Trump's 4 years.
Yes, I think so, one way or the other. And again, back what I said earlier, it depends on what the Russians want to do. If they decide that the only solution here is a military solution, yeah, I think that probably means the end of Zelensky and probably the end of the Ukrainian state. If, on the other hand, they decide to hold back and tap the brakes a bit to see what kind of deal they're going to get from the Trump administration, again, if they can sell some kind of a ridiculous Minsk III agreement to the Kremlin, maybe Zelensky could hold on for a while, and he'll just pretend to be less radical when it comes to NATO expansion or whatever. I don't think he will hang on one way or the other, but he could last a little longer if the Russians take the bait.
Jim Jatras, former U.S. diplomat. Thank you very much for the interview, sir.
Thank you.
Guys, if you can help us out, if you can support us financially, that would be great. You can see the account number on your screens. Please support us if you can. That will be great. And if you can buy us a coffee on a buy coffee portal, that will be fantastic as well. So if you can, please do so. That will help to extend our possibilities and to carry on and do more better programs. Also, if I can ask you about likes, subscribes of channel, and of course comments, and if you can pass it forward, that would be so nice as well. That will help us out to raise our audience and reach more people with our truth, with the truth, simply as that. Thank you very much. That was Jim Jatras. All the best for you. See you next time.